After 15 years of begging and pleading for a new skate game, we got exactly what we asked for, but realistically, at what cost? Most, if not all of the skating mechanics are still intact. You can still grind, kickflip, front flip, and dive headfirst in the ground if you want to. The foundations of Skate are still there, and believe me, it is fun to return to San Van, the original location of Skate 1 and 2, but it most certainly is not the same, for better or worse. Generally speaking, the game has leaned into its free-to-play mechanics, and it's really leaning into that Fortnite-ification narrative a lot more than I thought it would. It goes deeper than just microtransactions, and people are noticing. All I was looking for when it came to Skate was a game that really captured the fun gameplay loop that the series is well known for. Fans wanted a new version of Skate to recapture the personality of Skate 3, which is essentially the poster child of the franchise. However, it doesn't, to put it simply. Tonally, the culture around skateboarding has changed. It's not really about being punk anymore, and so EA have leaned into a more tech-oriented generation when it comes to its storytelling, and that's fully represented by your AI coach V, which personally, I don't see a huge issue with. The whole ethos around the new Skate is brought up by EA perfectly. It's not a sequel, it's not a remake or a remaster, it's an evolution of Skate. And trust me, it definitely shows. You can definitely feel that intention in the way the game is structured, with progression, the lobbies, and even the world. Once I'd gotten my hands on the game, I was skeptical, but genuinely excited. Not a lot of skateboarding games have the same oomph that the Skate franchise does. Like sure, Skater XL and Session are skating sims, but they don't generally offer the same scale as Skate. Meanwhile, in regards to skateboarding games in general, the Tony Hawk remasters have been the only real powerhouses when it comes to skateboarding games. And as much as I love them, I needed something less arcade orientated. And with Skate, I was genuinely quite impressed. Skating felt smooth and most of the time was responsive, which in essence is kind of a basic need when it comes to skateboarding games. And in regards to the feel, everything felt familiar if you've played an old Skate game, which is, nice to know that they didn't reinvent the wheel too drastically. The map that you're exploring is pretty cool, with different pathways for you to skate and climb around, and leans into that real sense of freedom and that evolution that this game needed to stand out from its previous titles and its competitors. And in that world, players are everywhere, because it's a shared world. Skating into other players is always a great sight to see, and it's pretty cool to know that there's still enough staying power when it comes to the Skate brand and the genre of game in general. Everything seems to be looking pretty good for the new Skate, but it's only when you look under the hood that you start realising that some of the cracks are starting to show their ugly little heads. It's very, very clear that this game is targeted towards a younger audience, and that's no surprise. Plus, EA want to make sure that the game is as accessible to everyone as possible, because in essence, this is a live service game. And because of this younger demographic, some mechanics have been simplified to make them a bit more broadly appealing, which I think is just such a disappointment. Skate 1, 2 and 3 often rewarded players who went that extra mile and learned all of the excessively cool tricks. And it feels like these elements are still there in the Skate, but they just haven't been pushed to even the standard of the previous entries. Having that open world seems like a dream, and to be honest, it is. There are tons of places for you to climb and skate around, but generally speaking, there is a lot for you to get your hands on. It just feels like there's something missing, however, and it can be attributed to the overall sanitization of the open world. Maps like Caverton Quarry, for example, from Skate 3, gave the player some really insane paths to skate, and they felt risky and dangerous. Meanwhile, maps like Super Mega Fun Park offered highly exaggerated and impossible sets of drops and ramps for you to skate around. None of that is really present in this new version of Skate. Yes, there are some glimmering moments here or there, but nothing on the large scale. And I have a feeling that new maps and locations similar to those seen in Skate 3 will be added over time with content drops. At this point, it's an inevitability. In regards to content drops, it might sound silly, but I really do miss the Hall of Meat. And I also miss the diverse amount of tricks seen in previous Skate games, which seems to be highly diluted in this new iteration. And again, I feel like it's going to be one of these things where EA are just going to drop these new tricks and new modes as either content drops or seasonal events. But that's just the practice of live service these days. They want to keep bringing people back, and so they're going to drip feed you content to ensure that you hop back into the game. One of the most glaring issues with Skate, for most people actually, is the art style. I am not an advocate of the art style by any stretch of the imagination. It's a bit jarring to come back to a version of Skate that looks like it's prepping for a crossover with Fortnite. And even from its initial trailer to now, my thoughts haven't changed. A lot of people are trying to point out that Skate never used to be this hyper-realistic game, which I wholeheartedly disagree. The character creation in previous Skate games allowed you to create some crazy looking characters, but the overall art style was realistic. Now it's a bit shallow and fundamentally it doesn't have a massive role in gameplay, it's just a preference. But it's a preference that many people share. Everything just looks a bit too soft, a bit too squishy, a bit too marketable perhaps. All jokes and jabs aside, Skate is fun. It's lacking in some areas for sure, but it is fun. It's just a shame that the soul, the essence, the vibe has gone. Or it's at least changed beyond recognition. The fact that EA has chosen to make this new Skate a free-to-play game is a blessing in disguise. On one hand, you don't have to pay £70 to play this game, lobbies are fuller because the game is free, and so more people can just get their hands on it. But on the other side, monetization is aggressively shoved in your face. If you want a cool cosmetic, you'll be paying upwards of £20 to play as the Grim Reaper, for example. Cosmetics like these were simply unlockable for completing challenges in older games, and it incentivized a reason to play these extra modes to complete these challenges, whereas now they're just instant purchase items, and so there's no incentive to go that extra mile. And because it's free to play, you can't also forget that there's an impermanence to the game. Eventually it will get shut down and become unplayable. Not necessarily anytime soon, but at some point it will, which is such a shame. There are so many things that I'm missing in this new Skate. Maps used to have quirky elements to it which are now missed, and the gameplay systems that are on offer are playable and do offer a decent amount of playability, but that being said, the trade-off is very clear. Yes, there is instant access to a premium skateboarding game, which has been set up as an evolution of one of the most famous skateboarding franchises of all time, but at the cost of its identity. By appealing to everyone, its key focus falls on absolutely no one. I don't have a problem with the game's tone. You know, times change and so does culture. Anyone actually expecting an early 2000s grit and grime style game should just get over it. EA was never going to go down that route. But yes, would it have been cool? 100%. Did it happen? No. In the grand scheme of things, Skate is good. Not great, not amazing, but good. It still offers a solid skateboarding experience with a map that's just big enough to be explored, whether you're skating, climbing, or running, or nosediving straight into the ground. That being said, it is fairly sanitized in comparison to its predecessor. The game just doesn't have as much of a quirky tone, or dangerous locations, or extra modes that added that variety that the series was known for. The biggest thing going for Skate right now is that it's free to play, meaning more people than ever will have access to it, which is fantastic. In this day and age, skateboarding games are few and far between, so more players getting interested in this genre is positive. The downside is that the content will slowly be drip-fed over time, and it already feels like the game is missing content, so I don't feel like that's going to change very much in the future. Maybe some new maps would be nice, but they haven't been officially mentioned, as well as new modes, so we're just going to have to look out and see. And at the end of the day, Skate is free. It may be tonally different from the originals, but at least it's not gone. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, then subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.